We'll begin now. Yesterday, as we have discussed about the three principles that Aristotle has talked about, and all those three principles in general we have discussed as we see that chapter number 25 offers an extremely condensed synopsis of the arguments that the sophist Zoolus has made, and Aristotle in general made three principles. And after discussing all those three principles in general, yesterday, as I said, that we are moving towards the last chapter of Poetics, or you can say the part of it has survived. It raises the question of whether epic or tragedy is superior. Now, the way the question is introduced, it clearly suggests that Aristotle is taking up an existing discussion rather than proposing this question to himself. He wants to continue this discussion. Now, when you read this last part of Poetics, this is confirmed that when Aristotle summarizes the position of those who criticize this tragedy, that's why he wants to continue with the discussion of superiority. In fact, we know already that Aristotle carries a view of himself regarding to this. He's having his own view on this question. If we go back to chapter number 4, we find in chapter number 4 that Aristotle treats drama as the fulfillment of the development of poetry. Even we have seen in chapter number 4 that drama is the refined form of poetry. It is fulfilling all the conditions and criteria that is with the poetry. It is fulfilling all the criteria. I'm trying to make it very clear that drama is the most refined format. Even we have discussed that Aristotle had pointed out that Homer's epic is noting towards development of character, making of a drama. The quasi dramatic mode of Homer's epic is adumbrated. And when drama proper appeared, it supplanted epic because it has certain superior qualities in it. One of the important superior qualities of drama is it has performative aspect carried throughout. Whereas we have seen epic has narrative element and drama has a performative element into it, and that's why drama needs to perform again and again. Aristotle will be firmly aligned with the supporters of tragedy because the sort of impact that tragedy carried, the object of tragedy is to evoke pity and fear. And clearly, we have seen that how tragedy evoke pity and fear. What are the different, you can say, aspects that tragedy carried to develop this evocation of pity and fear? And that's why Aristotle find most of the supporters of tragedies are aligned to Aristotle's point of view that tragedy seems to be superior than epic. We have discussed also that poetics is a sort of reply that Aristotle is trying to give to Plato's Republic. And we have mentioned some of the criticisms which Plato makes in the Republic about poetry. He mentioned poetry in general and tragedy, especially in particular. Plato criticizes. Now, when Plato criticizes both the thing, we have focused it and more generally and more immediately the relevant book of Republic is part 2, where he proposes certain laws. And when Plato in book 2 of Republic, where he proposes certain laws, he develops the idea that the quality of poetic genre is correlated with the quality of the audience. We have even discussed about it in detailed how the audience should be and how the audience should understand the things. The audience which are appreciating the quality of poetic genre, it is essential to recognize the quality of the audience also. That is what Plato mentioned. And Plato gives an example that small children like puppet, older children like comedies, and respectable adults like tragedy. But the older men, mature and experienced person prefer epic. This is what Plato has mentioned in the second book of Republic under the title of Law. Children like puppet shows, older children like comedies, then respectable adults like tragedy, older men, mature men, or experienced men prefer epic. That is what Plato mentioned. Now, the critics of tragedy, to whom Aristotle responds, make a similar type of assumption. His acting out a role is vulgar. This is what an objection is. As the vulgar performance of actor and such shows, because Plato somewhere mentioned that, and even we have talked about it in earlier lectures also, that tragedy is a vulgar. Tragedy is not vulgar. The performance of actors are supposed to be vulgar, and the only reason that tragedy includes vulgarity is to communicate effectively to the low grade members amongst the audience. All the audience sitting in the auditorium are not of the same mentality, nor all those audiences are able to understand the sort of quality that tragedy is trying to convey, trying to put it in front of the audience. So there are some vulgar elements because low grade members of the audience understand the thing with the help of vulgarity. Not all the members of audience are of similar IQ or mentality. They differentiate. So vulgarity is for the sake of low grade audience. That is what Aristotle came into the defense, that with the allegation that tragedy is vulgar. Because those low grade people, they are not able to follow the things that are going on, or they cannot able to respond, or they are not able to understand what is happening without the kind of exaggerated sort of acting. The actors used to perform the things in an exaggerated way because the exaggeration will make them to understand something loud is required. Not all the persons are able to understand the things very carefully and comfortably. Yeah, please. vulgar. vulgar. GAR. So making a little bit loud, because when even we can able to understand this thing very simply with our own experience in classrooms. When a teacher is putting something in front of a classroom, not all the members of the classroom can able to understand the thing within the one stroke. If a teacher is making some point, giving clarification to certain point, it is not possible that all the members in the classroom can able to understand that point when the teacher says once. Teacher needs to repeat it. Teacher needs to make it more simple and more simple and more simple, so that every member of the audience can able to understand that what it means by. It doesn't mean, my friends, that when teacher is repeating the thing twice, thrice, or quarterly, he is repeating the things again and again. The person who understood it at the first time need not to feel that why he is repeating the thing again and again, because the teacher is targeting to the lowest student of the class. Sometimes he need to make it very simple by giving various different sorts of examples, and when you make a different types of examples, when you try to bring different sorts of example, at that time it makes most of the students to feel that it is going to be repetition in my lecture. But this repetition is not my, you can say, way of making the point clear, but because the lowest member of the class should able to understand what this point means by. That means when you are trying to reach to the lowest member of audience, you need to be a little bit loud. And if you are loud, then and there it is possible for you to reach to the lowest member of audience. And that's why for them, Aristotle says that vulgarity makes them to understand the things very carefully. Please understand, my friends, the definition of vulgarity is not obscenity. Speaking loudly, arguing loudly, the way you find it right now on the television debate shows, it is going on. They are shouting on each other. They are not allowing to listen the words of other persons. There are some channels which do like this. It seems to be vulgar. It is called as vulgar, shouting over certain things, making the things little bit louder. Making the things little bit louder helps the lowest grade of audience to lowest grade of members to understand the thing. Otherwise, they are not able to understand what is going on. So, it is the responsibility of the tragedy, because this was the allegation laid down by Plato in the book of Law, second book of Poetics, under the title of Law, that tragedy is vulgar. And for making the clarification on the argument made by Plato, Aristotle is saying that the tragedy's aim is to reach to the all the sections of the audience. It is not made for the audience who are of high grade or who can understand the thing within one. It is the role of tragedy that has to reach to each and every member of the audience, and that's why tragedy has to become little bit of vulgar on the stage performance, not in the textual writing. Please understand this. Please understand this clarification for the argument made by Plato. If we can able to understand that why tragedy is not supposed to be good as according to Plato, because it is vulgar as per his analysis. For clearing it, he says it has its role to reach to each and every audience, and that's why tragedy needs to be little bit vulgar when it is being performed on the stage. But then, of course, you would have a kind of epic also, because if epic is trying to reach to the lowest grade of members, then it needs to be little bit vulgar in the narration. And that's why you cannot say that vulgarity is only the part of tragedy. Vulgarity is the part of performance. To reach, to convey, to bring all the audience together on the same platform, it requires to have some sort of vulgarity to be the part. Now, the premise that quality of a poetic genre can be judged from the quality of the audience that appreciates it, it is the point that Aristotle had accepted it in principle. That how you will define the quality of a poetic genre, whether it is good or bad. You can define the quality of poetic genre the way it has been accepted by the audience, how the audience had accepted it, how the audience has collected the whole experience. That makes the quality of the poetic genre to define that whether it is good or bad. Now, if you remember in chapter number 13, Aristotle said the weak audiences encourage the degenerate tendency of tragedy to turn away from its proper tragic pleasure to one more characteristic of comedy. The weak audience, if tragedy is not getting little bit vulgar in its performance, then what will be the effect of it? How it will affect the whole understanding of tragedy? If you see very carefully, my friends, in fact, tragedy aims at evocation. That is an ultimate aim of tragedy. Now, when it is having its ultimate aim, that means it has to reach to each and every member. You cannot say that I have chosen 10 amongst the 15. So if the 10 enjoys the tragic pleasure, my aim is completed. No, you cannot measure it with few numbers altogether. You have to understand it. We have to realize that the tragic pleasure need to be achieved by each and every member of the audience. You cannot say that okay, one, two, 3 persons have achieved it. That means I am successful. No, it has to reach each and every member of the audience, and that's why if if it has not reached to each and every member of the audience, and if some weak audience is left behind, And that is why, my friend, I am saying it very carefully that drama and especially tragedy is supposed to be the difficult task. It has to reach to a particular stage, taking all the members of audience together, not selective audience. Here you will find out, my friends. Here lies the difference. If you are interested in studying in further about all the theories altogether, you will find out Natya Shastra in Indian context, because as poetics is considered to be the very important theory for drama and performance in Indian knowledge world or performative world, or in drama, Indian drama, Natya Shastra is one of the most important seminal text. Now here there is slight difference. I think that I've said it a little bit before to you also. Why I'm saying this, because when you are preparing to write down your dissertation by the end of the fourth semester, because in the fourth semester you have to submit your dissertation of at least 60 pages, I suppose, 60 or 70 pages. At that time, most of the students, they are searching for such type of topic which can help them, but you can search these types of topics which can help you to extend more for your PhD work also. What is the slightest difference I'm talking about? Natya Shastra, although Natya Shastra is not part of our study, I'm telling it for the sake of understanding what Aristotle is talking about, what Aristotle is mentioning about. That tragedy has to reach each and every member of the audience. He is not saying that it should reach to the selective audience. That's why he said, if any audience is weak, what would be its result? If any weak audience is remaining there, this weak audience will encourage the degeneration of the tendency of tragedy, and it will turn away from getting the proper tragic pleasure, and it will move towards comedy, because if you are not able to gain tragic pleasure, then it is going to be a comedy, and this is one of the major characteristics of comedy. What is the difference I'm talking about? Natya Shastra and poetics. Poetics is not taking selective audience on the comparative, on the comparison, you will find out. Natya Shastra is talking about selective audience. It has to be performed in front of selective audience. Why? I'll give one simple thing to you, because I'll not go into deep discussion, because this is a very long and elaborate thing to discuss and to talk with. There's a very interesting discussions you will find out about if you try to compare Natya Shastra and poetics all together. Being a student of literature, we should understand this thing very carefully. Basically, Sanskrit drama is multilingual drama. Can you imagine how rich Indian literature was? What Indian literature used to call it as a Sanskrit drama. Sanskrit drama is not written in one language. English drama is written in one language. English throughout. Every character is speaking English. Greek drama, every character is speaking Greek language. But when you talk about Indian drama, and when you talk about ancient Indian drama in which you are talking about Sanskrit, Sanskrit drama is not a drama of single Sanskrit language. It is a multilingual drama where six languages are used in one play. Every character will speak his own language. And when each character used to speak his own language, audience need to understand all the six languages. And that's why Indian drama or Bharata's Natya Shastra used to say that we need to have selective audience who can able to understand six languages altogether. And that's why there is no chance for a person who is weak in understanding of language. And even Indian philosophy and Indian ideas, as I said, they are cyclical in nature because Indian mythology and Indian philosophy used to believe, or you can say, philosophy of Oriental world used to believe in rebirth of every person. If he does something good in this life, in next life he will get good birth. He will get a good position in his next life. So there is no end for life according to Indian understanding of life. But if you look the understanding of life that Europe used to follow, especially Greek used to follow, where there is no chance for rebirth, everything will come to an end here, and that's why you have to get punishment here itself, not at other places. Please understand when a theory is been formulated, when a theory is been created, there is some relevance for that theory to be the part of the social life. And this is the social life you will find out, my friends. That what is the social life of Greek society? That no one should left behind, no one should be behind. Everyone should be part of it. Nobody should leave behind. Everyone should be part of the whole getting tragic pleasure, and that's why there is no chance for any weak audience to encourage this because this will turn away to him from getting tragic pleasure, and that's why he will change the whole understanding of tragedy into the comedy. And that's why you will find out, my friends, Aristotle rejects the critics other premises. He rejects all those things. He's saying that no, there's no chance for anyone to be getting away from understanding or to be getting away from tragic pleasure. Everybody should get tragic pleasure. And vulgarity of performance is not limited to actors. Actors are not propagating vulgarity. Please understand this. What is the action on the stage? Action on the stage is the reaction to the events that has taken place before. Reflexes. And because actor is performing, and that's why it is seems to be vulgar. If this was the allegations laid down, then Aristotle is saying epic recitation can also be exaggerated and vulgar. If tragedy, because of its exaggeration, makes you to feel vulgar in performance, epic in recitation can also make you to feel vulgar. You cannot say that epic is not vulgar. Since a tragedy can have its effect when it is only read. And if the performance of tragedy is vulgar, then you can say that the fault is in performance, not the fault is in tragedy. If you read tragedy instead of, that is what happening with us. We are not able to watch any performances. That means when you read a tragedy, and if reading a tragedy doesn't seems you to feel vulgar, then performance is vulgar. Vulgarity is related with performance, not with the text of tragedy. That is what I said quite some time before. Performance is not vulgar. Sorry, performance is vulgar. Text is not vulgar. And moreover, the potential for performance means that uh, tragedy has the elements of spectacle and song. Tragedy has two more elements, spectacle and song, lyric and spectacle. That is what we have discussed. And epic is not having that. Spectacle and song, these two things are the additional pleasures which tragedy carries, which epic doesn't have. Epic lacks these two major elements of pleasure. And that's why Aristotle says that tragedy is superior to epic in all these senses. Now, in this chapter, not all the arguments Aristotle made here in this chapter are equally compelling. He goes on. That's why we said it that at the beginning of the lecture that though it is a last chapter, some part of it is survived only, not the all the parts, and that's why sometimes it makes us to feel that certain arguments Aristotle laid down here are not complete in itself. Now again, moving towards the superiority of tragedy, he goes on to claim that tragedy is superior to epic because it is more concentrated. It is more concentrated. Pleasure is better to concentrate it than spread out thinly. It has to be concentrated. Pleasure has to be concentrated. If it is concentrated, then you will get its result. Otherwise, if it is spread out thinly, then you will not able to get its results as expected. And that's why I said tragedy is more concentrated. Now you will have a little bit of doubt in your mind that how tragedy is more concentrated. Because if you remember the three unities Aristotle talked about, time, place, and manner, it is going to reflect a day in the life of hero. It is not going to talk about the whole 50, 60, 70, 100 years of life of that particular person. It is concentrating on only one day and what happened in that day, where he realized his mistake, when recognition and reversal plays its crucial role. That day is discussed in tragedy. And that's why it is concentrated, whereas epic is narrating each and every minute thing of that person. Epic is narrating the whole life of that particular person. And that's why epic is not concentrated. Tragedy is concentrated. And that is why he is pointing out that tragedy is superior because it is concentrated. He tries to prove it by giving example of Sophocles' Oedipus and Iliad's Homer's Iliad. But this will surely brings out a flaw in the argument. Why it will bring a flaw in the argument? Because he is talking about the length of Iliad. Now, no one can able to say that because Iliad is lengthy, it is less superior than Oedipus because it is not lengthy. Length is not an issue. That was the flaw that most of the editors and critics used to point out when Aristotle tries to give an example for this particular argument of concentration. The tragedy is concentrated, and that's why it gives pleasure, and this makes tragedy superior to the epic. But when you read Iliad and when you watch Oedipus, you will not find any difference in it. You also appreciate Iliad in the same way you appreciate Sophocles' Oedipus. No one deny that Oedipus at its present length is superior to the Oedipus that is expanded in Iliad. Now, expanding a play to the scale of an epic does not show that uh, tragedy is better than epic. Expansion of a story cannot be the criteria to find out the superiority of any genre, poetic genre. Sometimes it shows only that tragedies should not be expanded to the scale of epic, which we know from chapter number 18, where Aristotle mentioned it that tragedies contain less material because this less material can make the audience to get the tragic pleasure. Furthermore, my friends, Aristotle uses two passages in Poetics. Somewhere he has used those two passages, not a specific thing to find out. Somewhere he has mentioned these two passages in Poetics, which are difficult to reconcile with Aristotle's assumption that superiority depends on concentration. If you can able to concentrate, then if any genre is making you to concentrate on certain things, then that concentration or that thing which helps you to concentrate more is superior than the other. Because somewhere you'll find a few passages in Poetics. If you remember, somewhere in chapter number 7, Aristotle, mentioned that uh, The upper limit of any story depends on the memory. What would be the length of a particular story? The length of the particular story depends on how the audience can understand, can keep the things in their memories. It is related with memories. The larger the plot, the larger the plot or the magnitude of plot, then it is better to have remembered in the memory. Look out how different flaws you can find out. These flaws will prove us that Aristotle's poetics is not complete what we receive. But if you see that greater concentration makes the poetic genre superior, now for this argument, somehow you will find out there are certain different approaches that Aristotle took during the analysis in poetics. Somewhere you will find out he is not clear in himself to find out which is superior. Because this is the issue that most of the editors and critics of Aristotle trying to find it out. And as he has discussed all those things in last chapter, and then he talked simply because of the things which are survived of poetics, only one simple explanation about comedy he made. And so tomorrow when we talk about comedy, we'll find out that how minimum things he discussed about comedy when he discusses about comedy, when he talked about comedy. Now in chapter number 24, he said that the larger scale of epic gave positive advantages over tragedy in terms of its grandeur and variety. Now look out how he contradicts himself most of the time. And the explanation for this contradiction is not with us, and that's why it seems to be incomplete text. The upper limit of superiority depends on the pleasure that the audience will receive. Because if the things are of specific magnitude, then it will be easy for the audience to remember. It will be easy for the audience to keep those things in memory. But in chapter number 24, he says that the epic, the larger scale of epic gave positive advantages over tragedy in terms of its grandeur and variety. That's why you can say he contradicts himself most of the time. Similarity quickly makes up to accommodate the things comfortably in your memory. Similes are helpful for us to understand the things. And it may be the cause that leads tragedy to fail. Because in tragedy, you cannot give similes, you cannot add similes into it. Why you cannot add similes into tragedies? Because tragedy is concentrating on one particular event. It cannot give various similes to explain you. It cannot show the similar things to explain you the things. It is possible only in narration. In narrative mode, it is possible to give various similar things together to explain. But in performative aspect, because there's a limitation of time, you cannot use similarities or similes in explaining the thing. So similarity quickly palls. It helps you to accommodate certain things very quickly. But tragedy, it causes tragedies to fail. And that's why you will find out, my friend. It is not clear, therefore, that Aristotle has managed to give convincing form to this argument. And that's why I said we find it very much difficult, and that's why it is said by most of the editors that it is incomplete in itself. The text is incomplete in itself. If Aristotle is trying to defend it right from the beginning, and the book is written for the sake of defense of poetry, then how can we say that this defense of poetry become loose at the end of it, where he is talking about the superiority issue? But the data which is present with us, the text which is present with us, this text shows that Aristotle has not convinced it, or he cannot make a consistent claims which he made elsewhere in poetics. He is not consistent with the claims. He is shifting continuously with the claims that he put in other chapters. He is not able to reach to a particular conclusion, and that makes us to feel that this is not complete in itself. And that's why the debate which Aristotle initiated about superiority of epic and tragedy, which is superior, this has not reached to a particular conclusion that this is superior or this is not superior. He contradicts at various levels. He contradicts himself, and that's why we are not able to reach to one particular conclusion into it. And that's why, my friend, we have to conclude by understanding it that this is incomplete debate and discussion. In this way, we reached to end of the discussion of epic as we find it out in poetics. Tomorrow, we are going to discuss the last part of epic, which last part of poetics, where Aristotle discussed or gave a little bit of, or what remains with the text is little bit of analysis of comedy. There is, most of the time you'll find out there is a loss of analysis of comedy. These are the survived pages of which we find out something about comedy and what are Aristotle's view when he talked in detail about tragedy, when he talked in detailed analysis of tragedy by giving its different constituents, by giving the different ideas of the pleasure that it gives to the audience, the way he talked about tragedy in detail, the way he tried to compare tragedy with epic. He has also given, it is supposed that he has also given the same sort of analysis for comedy also, but we lost those pages, and that's why you will find out that how he is trying to bring out, how he is trying to talk about comedy, what are his views about comedy, and how he discusses about comedy. All those things we will discuss in tomorrow's lecture, and I hope that tomorrow we are able to conclude the whole discussion of epic with us.